Great, Preet. And I think we'll do gallery view as folks join, and then if you want to spotlight me, and then we'll make the switch. Felipe, hello, welcome. Where are you calling in from? Oh, I think you got muted. There's an icon down at the bottom.
It's the first time. Sorry. Hey, how are
Welcome.
you? I'm
Good,
from
good, good.
Lisbon,
Did you say Israel?
Lisbon, Portugal.
Lisbon, Portugal. Perfect. Okay, wonderful. Portugal is like up there on my number one places to visit, so that's great. Jose, welcome. Daryl, good to see you. Let us know where y'all are coming in from. Let's see. I know Daryl. Daryl's in San Diego. Oh, he's at jury duty. This is Daryl. I feel like we're getting like this is something that's kind of naughty. Like this is bad. Like you're doing something bad. Um, Daryl is one of our local community leaders helping organize ELC San Diego. So that's what the halls of justice are getting some tech insights. I love it. Um, that's
I
great.
kind
They
of love
probably
it.
need
Yeah, I kind of love it.
it. There he is. The badge, the official badge and everything. Gotta love it. Jose, what about you? Where are you calling in from? Jose, I think I see you. It looks like you're ready to respond. There's a unmute button down at the bottom that you can tap in. Oh,
Hey guys, sorry,
there we
just
go.
having issues with my Bluetooth. I'm also calling from. I'm in Lisbon right now, so
Awesome.
another one.
Lisbon. I love it. Is it welcome? Feel free to let us know in the chat or off mute where you're calling in from. Andre, I don't think I asked you this either. Where are you calling in from? Where are you based out of?
Yeah, Dublin, Ireland.
Wonderful, wonderful. All these places that I just want to spend time in. This is so great. Um,
The weather is perfect now, so it's the right time to join. Buy a ticket. It's gonna rain in about half an hour. So
I love it. Is it? What about you? Where are you calling in from?
Hey, I used to live in San Francisco for many years, but I recently moved to Tucson, so I'm in Arizona.
Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah.
I hear the winter is
Yeah.
lovely there. Tucson, Arizona. Love it. Um, Fantastic, everybody. Well, I think I want to give one more minute for folks to join. We're here to talk about incidents, so I think I need somebody to get us warmed up a little bit to bring us into like the why behind this event, and then we'll do like more of a formal kickoff. But if there is a memorable incident or an actually, we'll table this for 1 second. I think first off, like I know a couple of you have shared questions ahead of time, but love to get a sense of like what do you want to make sure we cover in this conversation. Norberto and Andre have got a bunch of things planned. Um, what's top of mind for incidents? Go ahead and come off mute, shout out a couple things or type some things in the chat for topics you want to make sure we get into. We've got some good ones that got shared ahead of time in terms of like scheduling, dealing with the emotions, dealing with stakeholders, or like communicating effectively with stakeholders, communication pathways. We've got some good ones like the psychological effects of on-call and how to deal with that. Like we've got some good things there. Like Felipe, Jose, Daryl, Dara, welcome. Anything top of mind you want to make sure we get into? Jose's like all of it. Make sure you cover all of it. I want to make sure we do all of it. Yeah, that's right. Aaron, hello, welcome. Daryl in the chat said onboarding new team members in the controlled chaos that is on call. We'll make sure we get into all of that. Philip, welcome. Felipe, is that Dara, Matthias? Anything you want to make sure we cover ahead of time? Love it. Okay, perfect. I'm going to take that as all of the above. Huey, good to see you. So with that, let's kick things off a little bit. So welcome everybody. My name is Patrick Gallagher. If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, I'm ELC's head of experience. So I help produce all of our community's programs and content, and I co-host the Engineering Leadership Podcast. Before we get started, as you all come in, I want to make sure you are aware that this event is being recorded. And so afterwards, we'll be publishing this, so you'll be able to view it in the content library after. If this is your first event with us, some quick context. At ELC, our mission is to empower engineering leaders. And so what we do is we host a number of different events, conferences, podcasts, and other content to support the leadership and career growth of engineering leaders. What's special about this event is it's co-hosted with our friends at Incident.io. For many of you here, this is probably going to resonate. Like, the truth is, incidents are stressful. Daryl, you mentioned in the chat, they are emotional. It is controlled chaos. They can generate shame, blame, stress, anxiety. It's the 2 a.m. wake-up call. It's all of the chaos. Andre, I see you laughing because I know you probably have a couple moments in your head specifically about this. Which is why I'm super excited to partner with our friends at Incident.io for today's conversation. So if you are unfamiliar with them and what they do, Incident.io helps you seamlessly orchestrate incident response from start to finish. So what's special is they sort of bring this expert perspective that can see incidents and challenges across company types in different stages of maturity and scale. And we've got Andre joining us as well at Intercom. And so Andre's also got a ton of war stories that he's drawing on as part of this conversation. So to set some quick context, like why we're here. So this is about humanizing the on-call experience. And so our two guests today, Andre and Roberto, will help focus on some of the things that help us smooth that on-call experience and make it more human-friendly. So the things they're going to dive into are things like simplifying procedures, streamlining interactions, enhancing communication channels, scheduling, and more. So they're going to cover all of those things. So I'll introduce them in a second. So we've got Norberto Lopez joining us. He's VP of Engineering at Incident.io, and Andre Blagojevich, Staff Product Engineer at Intercom. So I'll bring them up in a second. A couple quick logistics. So what is going to drive this conversation are your challenges. So you've already shared a ton of things with us ahead of time. So Andre and Norberto have planned the conversation around a lot of those topics. And the things that you bring up live here will also direct this conversation. So use the chat, the Q&A, and we'll be able to like bring folks in for dialogue as well. So I'll just say you're invited to jump in with your questions and to contribute your own insights to this discussion. So logistically, to navigate this platform, during the fireside chat portion, one request, please stay muted because the background noise, like there's a little bit of background noise element. So stay muted during the fireside. If you have resources or plus ones or comments, please drop them in the chat. And if you have questions, we've got a Q&A portal. It's on your right. You'll see like a little chat and Q&A little toggle. So you can go back and forth there. I see some folks already dropping into the chat. And then Norberto and Andre have worked in the questions that you've shared into their discussion. And we've got a ton of time for Q&A at the end. So be ready to jump in with your questions. So the other thing is that on the right, what's also special is you'll see everybody who's here in the call. So like you'll see little headshots and like names and roles. So if you scroll over those, it actually has like everybody's got a little profile. So you can connect with people on LinkedIn. You can message them one-on-one. And so you'll be able to see everybody else who's here. You can network with other people. We've already heard of some awesome collaborations being formed just by like saying hello to folks in the chat as well. A couple specific shout outs if you're in Toronto or San Diego, or go to any of those places. We've got two local leaders here who are organizing engineering leadership meetups. That's Daryl and then Huey. So feel free to shoot them a message if you know folks in the area and want to do some engineering meetups. But that's the type of collaborations we've got going on. So that all to say, since we want this to be a discussion, towards the end, if you want to come off camera, I want to invite you to come join us. Come as you are. If you're eating food or lunch, or if you're drinking your coffee or enjoying an afternoon tea, please join us off camera. It's meant to be a discussion. So with that going on, I want to invite, let's see, I think Philip was here. Philip C. Oh, he used to be here for a second. Okay. He might have been here a moment ago. So we're going to transition. I'm going to welcome Norberto and Andre, but I needed a little bit of help to warm up our group for this conversation and to introduce us to like what's at stake for this conversation. So I guess Daryl, you will be the other person I want to ask for a second, because you had mentioned a couple things about the controlled chaos of incidents. And so I was wondering if you could just like give us like a 30-second memorable incident that you have in your mind when you think about the controlled chaos, or like an incident that still haunts you to this day, to like really get us present to like why this conversation matters so much. If you could share us just like quick 30 seconds, what comes to your mind? What's something that you have in your head there?
Yeah, how's my audio?
Perfect.
Yeah, maybe about a year or two ago, we had a security incident that essentially pulled what feels like half of my company into on-call, and we were there for in stretches of, I would say, 3 to 4 days, with slight breaks, but just nonstop. And it was just, it was very taxing. We learned a lot, but that was probably the most controlled chaos I've been involved in.
We've got a lot of head nods there. I think relating to that moment. Thanks for sharing, Daryl. Um, so with that, I want to kick off our discussion and invite up our two speakers today. So joining us is Norberto Lopez, VP of Engineering at Incident IO, and Andre Blagojevich, Staff Product Engineer at Intercom. Both of them have extensive experience growing engineering teams, working with technology across all different elements of the stack. Specifically, I want to call out a couple things with Andre. So he has a lot of experience in design, development, and maintenance of global scale networking and infrastructure software services, with emphasis on cloud technologies and highly distributed systems, handling millions of users per day. And to me, when I read that, I'm like, I'm sure there has been no shortage of incidents amongst all of those different elements. So Norberto, Andre, welcome. Thank you both so much. And take away the conversation.
Very glad to be here. Hope everyone is doing well. Andre, I don't know if you just want to jump straight into things. I am definitely one that when I'm in incidents, I'll just get going. So you probably should do that. For those that weren't here when Patrick introduced, I'm Norberto. I'm VP of Engineering here at Incident. Andre, let's start with our experience of being on call. So if you could take us away and just give a brief overview of years of experience being on call, incidents, the most manic to the least manic. Tell us about it.
Yeah, what's going on? Thanks, Roberto. Thanks, Patrick. Patrick introduced me, but in a nutshell, I've been like cloud infrastructure, and then SaaS industry for about 15 years. So I was doing like on call during all that time. So been in kind of plenty of incidents on kind of both ends of the spectrum, from I would use the word really nice ones if you can't actually call an incident really nice, but it's an incident where you get paged, you get an alert, you hop on your laptop, the alert has all the needed information for you. There's like alerts, dashboards, runbooks, stack traces, all the information is just kind of there. You follow the runbook, you resolve the incident. Mitigation is really quick. You might send some comms to customer support so they can kind of engage your customers, and everything is kind of nice and fine, and then everything kind of resolved. To the complete other end of the spectrum, that's kind of Daryl described there, which is a large part of the company involved. The system is being completely down because your crucial backend service decided to die on that day because of a bug or an infrastructure problem. And then having to communicate that, having to kind of run in circles, figuring out what's the problem, who can solve it, who owns that part of the system, and then the most brutal part being that you actually have to go in front of paying customers and explain to them why why the SLA was broken, and why you haven't did in their view your due diligence to keep the platform up. Right, and what is how will you not do that going forward, and asking for like clear promises and like just sort of like proof that this is not going to happen. It's just kind of very, very, very difficult conversations, right? On the other end, they're kind of very difficult to manage, especially from the human perspective of it all.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think a lot of that clicks with me, and especially like you've talked about like a wide range of types of incidents, and I've seen this as well with like different types of companies where you have the style of like startup that has a certain shape of how to deal with an incident. You have a bigger organization which has a different shape of dealing with an incident. I've been in incidents where I would have someone from a network operations center just call me and go like, hey, I'm really, really sorry to page you at 3 a.m. But I just had two people go through this and they couldn't find the problem. So it has been now escalated to you. Do you mind coming into the computer? And so that's oh my gosh, like, so someone has already investigated. They probably have already changed the system while they're investigating. So I'm no longer going for the page that I had. I'm going for a page plus a change to the system. And that can be quite tricky, especially when you then have to communicate to customers.
Exactly. And I would just make one point there. At least you got the human calling you and explaining the problem in a nice way.
Yeah.
There's so many on-call systems where you get called by a robot at 2 a.m. in the morning saying the system is down, please acknowledge, and then you have to hop on and do the thing. At least you had somebody apologizing. for interrupting.
So, like one area here that I wanted to touch on is all of these incidents have different types of procedures. Different companies have different procedures. We're now talking about like how to simplify procedures, how to streamline all of these interactions. How have you seen changes happening, especially by leaders, to simplify those, to make it better for you while you're in those incidents, whether during the incidents or post-incident? I would be super interested to hear your experience there.
I think the first change that I've seen move the dial in that kind of positive way without, as you said, introducing process, introducing like red tape and checks and everything, is the whole concept of blamelessness when you're dealing with incidents, both during the incident and then in the post-incident flow. Like there's no pointing fingers. Every complex software out there is developed and deployed and maintained by teams of software engineers, right? So if something goes through, it's not like engineer wants to ship a bug, wants to get the service down. Nobody wants to do that, right? So it's something in the culture, something in the procedure, something in the approach, ways, intricacies of the system that led to the problem, and we should be looking at those intricacies of the system and those problems, in a holistic way, and then solving for those to get to improvements and not having those issues repeat again. But we shouldn't like blame immediately, and that also empowers engineers to go and investigate and propose improvements and propose fixes, right? Because they are not in this kind of firing squad line, right? And improving the system is what is the hard part. That's kind of one aspect. It's the kind of the blamelessness aspect. And the other part is it's like you need to have process, right? But you shouldn't have a process that's too strict, that kind of ties people down. You should have a process that allows good communication and good collaboration. I like to always use this example of like an A&E, accident emergency ambulance, coming to like a scene of an incident. It's about communication between team members that helps the person, get fixed fast and like sent to a hospital or whatever. Problem solved immediately. Like if there is like a chain of command, procedures to follow, red tape to go through, asks permissions. Even something small is like, oh, I need permission to access the system. Things like that, right? That go into engineers' ways. Like if you give engineers good tools to observe, debug, and communicate easily, you'll get this enablement. You still need to have some process, but like a sane, very well, good opinionated process to do that. I'm wondering how you think about processes and their flexibility, especially from the incident IO side. Yeah, and what you guys are kind of seeing.
That's a great question. So I'm definitely on the same page as you in terms of processes. Like keep them simple, prioritize communication. We have a whole topic on communication later on, so we're gonna get into the weeds of it. But the processes have to start even before someone goes on call, and then during on call, and then post on call. And this can be recovery and things like that. One thing I love telling everyone that is about to go on call or that it is on call is that things will be okay. And I think that's actually quite important. And most people don't think of this as part of the process, but every person that is on call for the first time, let's say, but even beyond the first time, but at least the first time, has anxiety, has fear of being paged for something that they think is unsolvable, or it's going to hit a very difficult customer and they're afraid of it, right? I think knowing that the leaders think it will always be okay helps a fair amount, and by itself tends to put people in a position where they don't overcomplicate things. And also they puts them into a place where they don't want to have rigid structures in place, right? When people are uncomfortable, they want rigidity. They want give me the step-by-step, the process to do a thing. And I think that works against them in an environment like a startup. And honestly, even in a big company. So I see this quite a lot where even some of our customers go for, hey, how do I put this structure in place, like this process in place? And oftentimes we tell them, maybe don't. One thing we added to our product, shameless plug here, but we added this to our product, which I think is absolutely lovely, is when you're setting up a workflow, we'll tell you someone going through this is going to take a few more minutes than the average person that has this process. And this is really to lower the process overload in things overall when it comes to on-call. Have you, like, are there things that you've tried in your past or there are true and try that have worked, that haven't worked? Tell us about the failures mostly.
Yeah. So what's worked? What's worked for Intercom? It's going to tie down Intercom specifically as kind of my most recent experience. Blameless reviews I already touched on, right? Those help a lot, right? Just going after every incident, going through the post-incident flow, doing the post-mortem, analyzing what happened, doing the timeline of how it unfolded, and asking questions not just about the system, but how can we improve the response next time. And then getting some action items on top of that, feeding that back into teams' roadmaps, so they can actually act and improve. Right? That definitely works because people need to feel empowered that they can improve the processes themselves. Right? They can contribute to improving processes themselves. By the way, this is one reason why we adopted Incident.io as our platform. Shameless plug. Because kind of values align there. Like values align. We don't like the process getting in our way. We like streamlined use cases. Good incident management flows. And also, like it's important when we talk about on-call. I always like to separate like during hours on-call and out of hours on-call, right? Because I think that's kind of important for startups, but also kind of more mature companies. During hours on-call is usually fine because you have the team in the time zone when they're there, when they're working, they have the knowledge, they have the contacts, they have everything there. Like, and if an incident happens, they're just there to jump. And it's like the entire team needs to jump on the instant they're there, right? It's the out of hours on-call that is like a much bigger challenge, right? And it's ideal if you're a company that can do like follow the sun model. But obviously not many companies can do that. Intercom is like Dublin and London time zone, for example. We can't go and like have somebody there on the other end of the world. So what we try to do and what really helped this process is to have a really motivated out of hours on call, right? So we do not, now this is an Intercom thing, right? Might not suit all companies, but what we do is we get volunteers to do out of hours on calls, like engineers who actually want to join and learn a lot about the platform, like in its entirety. You don't want to experience different parts of the platform by actually troubleshooting incidents. And we make sure that they do not get too frequent rotas. So there's like only 6 or 7 people on the team. So you get like once in a month and a half, for example. They're remunerated for their work. So you're working out of hours. You're getting paid out of hours, right? And that kind of ensures that we have like a really dedicated, really motivated hour. So even if you get page 2 o'clock in the morning, you're expecting to get a page 2 o'clock in the morning. It's part of what you signed up for, right? So you are there and you want to learn about the system. You can actually provide active feedback. So you're not just like, oh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to fix this as the way I can. I'll patch stuff up and I'll leave it for the morning, right? I'll actually go and jump in and try to improve processes afterwards because I'm directly interested in that, right? In terms of the failures and kind of what doesn't work, obviously a lot of things doesn't work as being software industry, right? Intercom, you mentioned startups. Like Intercom is no longer a startup. It's kind of a more mature company at this stage, kind of larger company. But we still have a lot of like culture in kind of the startup world. It's kind of shipping fast, getting features out there, doing go-to-market, finding what's a good fit for the customer, what works, what doesn't, right? And that kind of leads to 2 issues. One is like context problem. It's like if a team has an alert and needs to kind of leave it to the out of hours on call team, they need to make sure they provide context. It's an alert that somebody woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning can sort, right? Or has a way to figure out. But also because of that kind of fast movement, if you're a company that moves fast, you necessarily like there is no, it's like you have 3 things choose to kind of scenario, It's like you have trade-offs. If you move fast, there are some things on the quality that's going to push back. If you focus on the quality, you'll slow down a bit. Like it's figuring out that kind of sweet spot, like where you want to be. And because we still want to move fast and go fast, it's just having this out of hours on call, get the context and understand the issues that can be facing, once they get paged.
Very nice. You talked about like like taking stuff out of the on-call work.
Mhm.
Do you have any interesting work that you brought out of the on-call rotation back into Teams roadmaps so that you can improve the reactive work?
I'll talk here. Like, there's so many items that I can't actually choose a particular one. We have a process where we feed everything back into roadmaps, right? So as part of road mapping, we actively look at on-call, and that's something that works well, right? Team needs to be aware of the on-call toil, so that shouldn't go hidden. It should be like, oh, how many people have been paged? How many times our out of hours team has been paged for our issues? You know, that's a piece of information we expect back. We want to understand, how many incidents there were, how long they took. Were there like persistent ones that are constantly happening? Are there alarms that are constantly firing, being noisy? And what we can do to actually feed that back into the roadmap and like take a portion of engineering time to actually address those. So we don't get an increase in technical debt, because then that starts dragging you down as you try to go forward, right? Because you kind of accumulated too much kind of issues, and you constantly need to firefight with your systems. You don't want to allow your system to start being on like permanent fire, to be able to go forward, right?
Yeah, I actually think this is a super important aspect of on-call that I don't know if most, but a lot of leaders don't appreciate, which is if a team doesn't have the ability to invest and improve things as a response to a noisy pager, the on-call people will start resenting holding the pager. They won't want to do it, right? And so you talked about volunteers and wanting to be on the pager, learning opportunities. If they then resent it, they will come out of it and they will never go back to it. And so maybe I'll actually go like a step further from what you mentioned and say that one thing that leaders can do, especially in a noisy pager, is to immediately give the people on call the authority or the agency to prioritize work that otherwise they wouldn't want to continue supporting things. And so if the on-callers can go to a team and say, hey, this is the top priority, sorry, but pager is super noisy. Here's the reasons why we need to fix this. I think they will actually love being on call. And a lot of the problems of like pager noise and whatnot go away because you have the incentives to fix them, and you can fix them, which is quite good.
Yeah, exactly. And those incentives should be there for every company, because like your customers buy your product for the features, but they stay for the quality of those features.
Yeah.
If you have lots of features, but then the quality is bad, ultimately you're going to start losing customers. Like, so there is a proper business case for investing time in this.
Absolutely. We talked a lot about communication in a lot of what we just went through. I wanted maybe to jump into a section just on communication. And so we have this topic about enhancing communication channels for on-call situations. And I love one bit you mentioned about like processes and good communication, and how good communications can be better than processes, from what I gather. I'd love to drill down a bit into that. And what do you think are the challenges or the most challenging aspects when it comes to communication during those incidents?
I think there's kind of two aspects to that. The first one is making sure everybody's on the same page, right? And by everybody being on the same page, I mean, you don't need, like, I've been in plenty of incidents in my career where you have this kind of constant stream of questions like, what's the current status? What is the current impact? What is the progress on the incident? It's just kind of, and you're an engineer on it, and somebody is just coming in, interrupting. Can you tell me what's going on now? Can you tell me what's going on now, right? There was an extreme case in one of the teams I was on where we actually, out of a joke, decided to create like an acronym out of like, what's the current impact? Like W something, whatever it comes, and print it on a T-shirt, and then wear those T-shirts as a thing, right? But it's like good communication means that, I mean, ideally, like for us in Intercom, like you have a Slack channel. Everything, all the relevant information is that Slack channel. Like anybody who wants to know anything about the incident, join the Slack channel. It's all there. right? You can read through the whole history. Oh, this is what the engineers come in and say, well, I did this, I investigated this, here's the graph, here's the dashboard, you're currently up. Incident commander can go and post regular updates. Like, so everybody's on the same page. You don't have this need to ask an explicit question. You just go and look for the information. Instead of like a pull model, you have, well, instead of a push model, you have a pull model, which is better, right? So, and that's what good communication tooling allows you to do. Is like everybody should have the ability to answer this question without having to kind of nudge the actual on-call engineer who needs to be focused on the problem at hand. And the last thing they need is an interruption in the whole process, right?
Yeah, that is so good. I've had so many times when I have to pick between solving the problem or communicating about the problem, and you get really confused. You're like, should I be fixing the problem? Should I be communicating about the problem? And especially earlier in my career, I often didn't know which one was best. And I also find it depends on the company. Some companies are like, just fix the problem and we don't mind being silent to the customers. And other companies want to be very vocal to the customers, want to be very in tune, very aligned with them. And they would rather have you spend an extra half an hour solving the problem, but have exceptional communication with the customers. So that's really quite interesting. In your opinion, so you mentioned Slack and keeping people aligned, but in your opinion, what has worked well to ensure good comms during incidents?
So I mentioned a single kind of stream of communication or single place of communication where kind of everything happens. You can come from like authoritative source of truth, but also sticking to roles. It's what you mentioned. Exactly what you mentioned there is like you don't know when if you're asked should there be communication. So if you have well-defined roles and everybody knows what the role they take, and the tooling allows those roles to be kind of utilized to the best, then you get this kind of force multiplication of it's like you reduce the times, you reduce the downtime. Again, going back to this parallel with like an ambulance, it's like everybody has a role there. It's like you don't have like 5 paramedics jumping on somebody with a defibrillator. Everybody knows their place. Everybody knows what they should be doing. Driver is at the wheel. A paramedic is up there with the patient. Somebody else is doing communication with the hospital. Same thing here. The engineer should be head down. Incident commander should be there to connect and keep strings together. Customer support should be there to handle the actual messaging to the customers, or depending on what the company has. In our case, it's like customer support doing like active messaging. Incident commander might be responsible for like doing status page updates. So everybody has a role, and so once the page fires off, and you realize that's important. It's important enough to have a large part of the company jumping in. Sticking to roles and knowing those protocols helps a lot solve this issue quicker, because you do not lose that time in just figuring out what do you need to do in this case. That's an overhead. Every second counts. If you're a company that aims for 4 nines, that's like 1 hour of downtime per year, right? So every minute counts for you at the end, right? That minute could have saved your 4 nines that you might have promised to your customers as your SLA in the contract.
Yeah, absolutely. Specifically on the roles, like we do a lot of distinction between these things, because even like an incident commander may not be the communication lead, and we may not want them to be the communication lead. We might want someone else to be. And so, like there's so many things that we can do, but specifically like aligning comms, knowing who is doing what, like makes things so much easier for sure. On the flip side, what hasn't worked well for you?
I'll talk about one example, and it goes around the human side. You talked about these expectations of somebody coming in on call, right? And if they know the problem, if they know the system, it's completely fine. It's like they go in, they fix things. But in a lot of cases, they are not sure. They might be a new joiner, they might be inexperienced. Yeah, they went to trainings, they shadowed the on-call, they got like exposure to maybe 80% of it, but then 20% happens, right? And a lot of the times, and this is just general, I think, like human nature, it's like, well, I don't want to cause commotion. I don't want to put my hand up and say that, I need help. I need to escalate this. I need to like bring more people in. And they don't feel empowered by the process to actually do that. They don't realize that the aspect of blamelessness somehow it gets implied that, oh, but maybe somebody will say that the on-call engineer hasn't reacted, well, or hasn't fixed things. While we always try to tell on-call engineers, if you do not know, like if you're seriously seeing an incident where you don't know, raise your hand, engage an incident commander, get other people on it, because it is about fixing this. And why you weren't familiar with that problem, that's a system problem, right? That's a process problem. It's like, why haven't we given enough context and knowledge to fix this problem? I'll give one example. Like I had an actual incident where a customer complained. So Intercom is a customer messaging platform for folks who don't know, and we have like a chat messenger. And I had a customer come in and said, we do not see Chinese characters rendering well in your messenger, and they actually are completely ineligible. You can't read what's there. To which my first response is, I have no idea what to do. It's like I am seeing the video. They did the recording and their character sign. It's all Chinese to me. And I was like, okay, I need to ask somebody. I need to raise this. I was like, look, this is out of my concern, right? So let's start trying to get engineers, or let's try to find mitigations for this, or people who know how to do mitigations. But we're in it, and it's all about like getting that fixed. And it's like this kind of human kind of reluctance to say I need help.
Yeah, that's super
missing there.
interesting. And I definitely agree. Now, every time you involve another human, right, or that you escalate, or you get someone else into the room, the size of kind of like, or the amount of people involved kind of keeps increasing and increasing. How do you think communication changes as the number of people involved changes, or even the size or the criticality of the incident changes? How do you adapt communication to that?
Yeah, so there is this process where it kind of gets more and more complicated. I would say almost exponentially complicated, especially if the issue is, let's say you have like a very low level backend failure, and then you have like a ripple effect through the entire system, with like many features being impacted, many areas of the product being impacted. And the challenge becomes like, how do you, first of all, those teams will get paged themselves. Those teams, somebody will also jump on those teams with an alert. Like, how do you know these are related? How do you know as you're getting paged? How do you have that context in the view that there's something else happening there? Like, because now you suddenly have a lot of these like small streams going around, and somebody needs to act as a bridge constantly, trying to like bridge communication between this and this, trying to get things into order, trying to see what's related, what's not related. And that is what kind of things kind of break down. And I like to say that there is a level at which a war room is actually a better solution to incident management than just getting people on and to try to collectively troubleshoot. Everybody hands on, just forget the process, just go like full communication, and try to get the issue sorted with whatever needs you have.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in a few war rooms. They can be, I don't know how you feel about it, but they can be super efficient, but also nerve-wracking, especially depending on who you have inside that room.
Definitely, if you have a CTO in that room and you're an engineer there, you can feel an impression.
Definitely can become nerve-wracking. Well, maybe that's a hint that we should jump into a happier section. Maybe.
Yeah.
Let's talk about like how design, user experience plays a role in incident management, and maybe we can start with like, in general, how do you think incident management companies like us, like Incident, help with the experience of being on call for you?
They help a lot. Like you would kind of say, well, incident depends on like your system, but the tooling is there. It plays a huge part, because you do not want to spend time messing around with tooling when you're trying to solve a production incident. You want the tooling to be there to help you, to assist you, right? And I've been in plenty of cases where the tooling is kind of getting in your way. And it's always getting in your way. You have to kind of write a lot of custom automation to connect things to suit your workflows, right? You cannot have the incident management platform adapt to your flows, like provide some out of the box good like opinions, like strong opinions, that's fine. But then the rest allow you to kind of customize the edges of that and then shape it in what you need. And so that is kind of, I don't feel that on-call kind of on-call excellence in a lot of companies is a first-class citizen. It always comes as a second thing. It's like, okay, let's ship the product, then we'll think about the quality, right? Don't think what's the on-call and processes.
Yeah.
And so necessarily you need to have, it's not a solved problem. It's not like you start a company, let's say a SaaS company, and then you say, well, these are the good practices and good tooling for on-call. I think everybody does their own thing, right?
Yeah.
Everybody does their own hodgepodge of processes and automation and like bits and pieces they can pull out together. And like, we'll use this for ticketing, and we'll use this for debugging, and we'll use this for monitoring, let's use for incident management, and we'll use this for flows. It's like you need to make sure that all that kind of fits together. And incident management flow is actually a good point where you can actually try to put like sockets for all of these kind of things to wire up really nicely, right?
Very nice.
And so this is where I think there's a lot of opportunity for companies like Incident in this space. It's a space that's kind of ripe for disruption.
Yeah. So so almost like in your opinion, this isn't sorted yet.
No.
Tell me more about it.
So, I mean, how to describe it? Again, let's go back to the A&E scenario. Like, imagine that your paramedic comes out and has to mess with the defibrillator for 5 minutes to adjust the settings, right? So let's say that, I'll give an example, that we recently had an intercom. Like in the previous pipeline that we used for incident management, it was extremely hard to page somebody manually. Just figuring out who's on call for what team, what service that team owns, getting and just paging them. It's like and that's a critical part of your system. Like if you have to go in and something is broken, you don't know how to fix it, you want to escalate to somebody else, or an incident commander wants to pull in somebody else, they need to have that as like at their fingertips, right? And having the ability to just go and do, commands that team, get me whoever is on call, try to page them, helps immensely. But we were losing a lot of time here. That's a UX element. Asking questions and getting information about your incident. Again, that's what we touched on kind of earlier, where you want to get your questions answered without going and bothering the on-call engineer, bothering the incident commander. Having that in a nice user interface, in a nice flow, easy to figure around, easy to figure out what happened. Even to the small things like somebody got paged. Why did they get paged? It's like, well, okay, here is the timeline. This person was paged by a phone, was paged by SMS, was paged by a Slack. And so you can immediately like answer questions yourself, that help you with that. And that is where good UX, good process come together. And I think people think about good UX as like, oh, you're selling something like you're Apple, you're selling iPhones, and therefore you need to have good UX because it's a product thing. But really good UX and good experience is there for any tool that any human person needs to use for serious work. And on-call is really serious work.
I agree. What do you think has worked well when it comes to design and user experience? Like you mentioned a few things already, like connectivity between things and showing like a timeline. Like, is there anything that made a major difference?
Being able, so there are many things I think here. First of all, what we got now is the ability to see all incidents that are going on. That's something we didn't have previously. It's very hard to figure out what are all the incidents that are going on in the company at the same time, right? Now you can just jump in and you can say, well, this is what's currently active out there. So you're getting paged. What's active out there? What's going on? What's broken? What are people working on? Oh, they're working on this. Oh, this is actually related to this, right? So I'm going to jump into that, right? Ability to self-serve. I think we started using a lot of kind of Eye of Sauron emojis in our incident channels because like people like us who were like just implementing the new flow could jump into a channel and see what's going on and see if there are any help that's needed. We see like people trying to do things wrong. We could jump in and say, well, hey, actually, you can do this. Here is a friendly advice. Not want to break your flow, but here is a friendly advice. It's just a Slack message, that you can do. So that kind of worked really well. Just getting into those features. Being able to like having a platform automatically track actions for you is great. A lot of times in like our old incident reviews, we'll have to go through the timeline, what happened, and figure out what would be the actions, and you're already like late because you're doing that, day after, a few days after, a week after, and you kind of lost the context of the conversation. Now I have the conversation there, and you're able to say, oh yeah, but during the incident itself, this should be an action item. This should be an action item. You immediately know there. You're in the context. So your kind of retrospective becomes much richer, and you're able to improve the process by quite a lot. But kind of speaking about a wish list, if you want, is my biggest wish would be kind of a world where like a human, I know this sounds harsh, but like a human engineer is there simply because there was some decision making that couldn't be automated. Like we couldn't automate the person out of it, so we need him there. Like ideally, there's a problem, or we'll roll back, or we'll fix the infrastructure. Well, infrastructure is the harder problem. At least we can roll back. But it's just like I want to make a point that if you have all information in one place, you have all your monitors, all your like stack traces, debug information, communication, everything's like nicely accessible. The human is just there to make decisions. They don't have to spend a lot of time figuring out, right? That's what we want.
I definitely love that. I'll make one last note before we jump into kind of like how it affects our personal lives, but it very explicitly, we do try to think about a lot of these things, and there are kind of like 2-3 basic points that we care deeply about. One is simplification. This isn't anything novel, but it can be quite powerful. Like it is hard to do things that are simple, specifically when it comes to products. And so we try to bring simplicity into it. And we don't try, for example, to cover all of the edge cases you can find, because I think that is almost like an anti-pattern to things. And that can also be powerful. But you mentioned a few things there, like timelines and whatnot, which is, this is all like information. And for a non-caller, having clarity of information is absolutely critical, in my opinion. And how to make the right amount of details appear at the right moment with the right actionable. This is it is difficult. And so as an example, in our on-call app, when you open an incident, you're going to have just a few things. You'll have like severity, the status, who's the lead, who's the facilitator, when it was reported, the last time the incident was updated, a call to action that takes you to your Slack channel. We also attach links to alerts if they are pluggable. And the first time I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is nice. But the amount of detail that goes into making something simple, it is incredible. It's unbelievable. Anyway, let's talk about how it affects us. We have only a couple of minutes, and then we have to jump into Q&A. So I'll just shoot like a couple of questions. This is all about how to promote work-life balance. We all have personal lives. We might have partners. We have an experience outside of work. What do you think most people that have never been on call never realize until they are?
Yeah, I think that the first thing you don't realize is the impact it has on your personal life. Okay, so I have 3 small kids myself. I felt this, and when my third was born, which is now like a year and a half old, I had to excuse myself from voluntary. I used to do a lot of voluntary on call, and I had to excuse myself because that just doesn't work, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like the impact that it has on your personal life. You can just say like, oh, you have somebody who's out of hours on call and they didn't get paid that week, and who cares? They have a beautiful life because they didn't get paid this week. But even when you're not getting paid, you can't take your kids to the swimming pool, for example. You have to be there next to your laptop because you have those like 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever the company kind of SLA is for actually responding to an incident. And you're just tied. You can't walk away from your house. You can't do things. So you're actually there. And also is this expectations, this kind of PTSD that you get from like 2:00 in the morning calls that you have to factor into account. It's like you have a phone ringing, maybe it's 11:00 in the evening. The person who's on call might as well think it's not from his mom, it's the pager ringing, until they actually see the phone. So you have these, and I definitely had this kind of PTSD effects of late night on calls. I don't want to, obviously. Maybe I'm using the term PTSD too strongly here. Don't hold me
Oh,
for it. Sorry,
but it's tough. Yeah, for sure.
but it is tough. Like
Yeah.
you get scared of phone ringing, right?
All right. One
So
last
you need
question.
to, yeah, exactly. Sorry,
Before we go into QA,
yeah.
what do you think can be done to improve the lives of people that are on call? Like, what are key things that you think are important?
So you need to have flexible schedules. You need to have the ability for people to excuse themselves on legit grounds. Family, definitely. You need to offer time in lieu. If somebody has been on call 2 o'clock in the morning for several hours, like don't have them come into the office next morning. Those are like the things you have to be aware of how your team's on call toil is, how strong it is, how it impacts them, and you have to balance accordingly. You have to offer them flexibility, especially if you're asking them to work out of hours. Otherwise, you just get burnout and you get churned.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. By the way, I agree with everything you just said. Cool. Patrick, Preet, I don't know if we should jump into Q&A, but maybe we should. There are a lot of questions that I've seen in the chat.
Absolutely. Dara, I'd love to invite you up to ask your question about involving product in like the improving incident response scenario. So if you want to jump in, ask your question.
Yeah, I think, I understand that a lot of this is we feel the pain because we are engineers, we run the teams. But oftentimes, especially when the incidents that doesn't have a direct customer impact, I feel like it's very hard to bring in the product team in there. And I think some of the things that I heard about makes a lot of sense, that all they need is the information, right? That what's happening, how frequent it is happening, how long it will take to fix it, and how can you prevent it. And I feel like we don't use any of the incident management platform today, so our information is all over the places, and every single time it is like scrambling through lots of wiki pages and docs and all of that. But I wonder, how is the experience for you guys to bring in your product folks into this, and then also be your partners in fixing and driving this and improving this? Yeah.
Absolutely. Andre, do you want to give it a go? Else, I'll just start.
Sure. Yeah. Some from our end. So we have in Intercom products, and then we have infrastructure engineering, and obviously the owner of the processes is more on the infrastructure engineering and like what tooling we use and how we help. The teams, but we do try to get product engineers on call. So part of our out of hours on call people there are from product as well, right? So we kind of let them understand what it is and feel the pain, try to educate, right? One thing. Also, we try to get product to educate the on-call engineer, the out-of-hours on-call engineers as well. It's like, what are the processes? Was like sort of like do a handover. If you have a feature and you are writing alarms for it, because alarms are what is going to page you. You cannot give an out-of-hours on-call a responsibility to serve that page unless you met some criteria. There's good documentation, there are good runbooks, there are good metrics, dashboard. So there is some context information, captured there. It does not have to be perfect, can be iterated on, but enough to address like 80% of issues.
Dara, just on my side, there's something that I find quite interesting. So you talked about information is everywhere. Maybe product managers need to understand what's happening during an incident, or they might not care about an incident. This, I think, is an area that, done well in an incident management tool, you configure it so that it communicates with our product managers and brings them into the fold. So just a few examples. We have this concept called a catalog, where you can programmatically tag things about your code base and about your products. And at Incident, we have this thing called features and feature areas, which are things that are owned by product managers. And what you can do is actually set up a workflow that if that feature area is affected during an incident, it will immediately send a message to a group in Slack and invite them to a specific channel, whatever it is, to go like, hey, your feature area is affected. You should be paying attention. And then also, like, we pretty much operate in Slack. And so like everyone is already there. They can join a channel and just keep an eye out. But these types of things like workflows can be quite useful for these things.
Yep. Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. I mean, they are part of the channels, but as you said, right, we don't have a centralized tool where basically we can automatically have them included as well as they can just go and find all the information. But
Yeah. I mean, this is like definitely one of the great things about having one incident management tool that collates everything. Yeah.
Jumping in real fast, I think there's another interesting conversation. You all ended sort of on like the work-life balance part. I think there's a question that came in ahead of time from Philip, where it was this challenge of balancing communication with frustrated stakeholders and then like respecting the boundaries or like the toil of after hours on call. And so I think like part one, part two, effectively communicating with frustrated stakeholders and like not overly burdening the after hours on call folks. Thoughts on that sort of dynamic?
Norberto, you want to go first?
Yeah. So with can you repeat the first one, Patrick?
Yeah. So incident happens that is really impacting probably a big customer, key stakeholder. And you're communicating with them after hours about the impact of that. So like, how do you deal with that frustrated stakeholder or customer maybe who's really mad that something crashed and it's impacting them significantly, and not overly burdening or bothering your team that's like leading, like your incident commander and then like the people actually leading the incident response?
Yeah, I mean, there's like 100 caveats here in my response, for sure. But I think one is, if you have like a difficult stakeholder, that is going to bother you quite a lot if things are getting in your way and your communication is not good, or you don't have good communication hygiene. If you do, and I think incident management tooling can help, but they're not the thing that solves the problem. But if you incentivize and have a culture of good communication, I think most of the time this problem goes away, because it's not one-way communication. It's not the on-caller communicating to the stakeholder. It's also the stakeholder understanding how things get communicated. And so that kind of tends to go away. I know this doesn't really provide a response, because creating a culture of communication and effective communication is difficult. But one thing I would say that simplifies this is to have a well-defined cadence of communication that is explicit with good templates. I think that can facilitate quite a lot of things. So, and this can also be configured in incident management tooling. But when you're in an incident, it's super, super useful. We have this concept of nudges in our own tool, which is, if you're in an incident and you haven't updated a status page, if you haven't done anything in that incident for 15 minutes, half an hour, you can figure this out in those nudges, and you can codify it. We're going to say, hey, you should be doing an update. And you can ignore it, or you can do the update. And if you want, you can then template those things and have, hey, you should be updating. Here's the template. Do you want to use it? And so that brings the barriers down of communication, which means that even if you have a frustrated stakeholder, telling like a frustrated stakeholder that the first message on an incident is, hey, we are aware of the incident. This is an incident of high severity. Because it's high severity, we're going to communicate every 15 minutes on the status of this thing. The next update will come at this time, right? You're basically going, these are the expectations. Now go away and let me take care of this, at least for the next 15 minutes. Those things sound very simple, but they work wonders. They're super important, because it allows the on-caller to do their job effectively, and also allows like communication to go away for about 14 to 15 minutes, then get a reminder, and then you act on it and you go back to the thing that you were doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Norberto. Go ahead, Andre.
Yeah, I just want to just throw in my 2 cents there. Definitely, I completely agree with communication hygiene, and it's best if you already have like relationship managers that deal with that customer that are in kind of regular communication. Like we don't bother engineers with this, because we do not try. You often, if you get that signal to engineers, oh, there is a really big customer impact. Obviously, like, some kind of information needs to go. But if you're just providing just pure feedback from the customer back to the engineering team, that's going to disrupt them. Right? They need to be focusing on fixing the problem, like not just thinking, oh my God, the world is going to end. Because that all of that has to be put in context. It has to be communicated with like proper cadence hygiene by ideally a person who has like good communication and a good relationship with that customer specifically.
Perfect. Thank you both. We are at our time, and so I want to wrap this up. But first off, thank you both so much for sharing stories and insights around process communication. For those of us who are still here, would love to get a sense of just like any takeaways, actions that you're taking in the chat. Please share there. I think a couple things that stood out to me. I think like, are there any key takeaways like Norberto or Andre that you want to share with the group as we wrap up? And close our time together?
Takeaways. Yeah, incidents will always happen. So you really need to figure out how to get good at them and how to communicate in those incidents. Don't wait for an incident to come to figure it out. I think that's a bad approach. And so a lot of the stuff we talked about, like the on-caller will be stressed. The on-caller has stuff to do during an incident. The on-call also might have to communicate. The on-call might have to deal with critical stakeholders. And so having some preparation ahead of time, even if it's the basics, you will not regret it, ever. And this isn't about use an incident management tool, although you should, of course. But even if it's just a page in your wiki on how to go through things, do it today. If you don't have it, you won't regret it.
Yeah, and don't expect perfection. Make it an iterative process, right? Try something that might seem to work and then work on it. It's Intercom didn't get our on-call specifics. I won't say if they're good or bad, but even the thing that we have today, we didn't get to it immediately. It was a journey to get there and figure what works, and it is a thing that kind of evolves as the company evolves.
Yeah. One other thing, if you allow me, Patrick, is we talked about like on-call being able to take work into the team from a poor on-call experience or from a noisy pager. And like the environment will become toxic if you don't allow work that comes from a pager to arrive at the team to be fixed. So make sure you prioritize that work. If you don't, again, you will regret it. It truly becomes toxic and people won't want to go on call. And the moment they don't want to go on call, you now have two problems. The one you haven't fixed due to the incident, and you don't have anyone to go on call.
Absolutely. That was my number one takeaway. Matthias in the chat shared the exact same sentiment. This is the number one thing I'm taking away. Give people the authority and the agency
nice.
to prioritize the work. I love that. So I think in conclusion, if you're looking at incident management tools and platforms, Incident.io helps you seamlessly orchestrate incident response from start to finish. Their on-call platform connects you to alerts. It configures your schedule for all of your teams, and it gives you the confidence that the right people will be notified every time. And it's designed to be so good that people will actually want to be on call. So if you want to learn more, you can book a demo. We've got a link in the chat as well. Check it out. Like seriously, like it makes incident management easy and fun. So with that, I want to say thank you all so much for joining us. Norberto, Andre, thank you so much for helping guide us through making on-call more human. We'll hope to see you all next time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting us. This was great. Thanks, Patrick. And thanks to the team.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Good one, folks.